Hello and welcome to the guided tour of Alex's house and the garden. And I was going to show you the front, but there's some people at the front. I'll show you that later. If you come along over here, you should be able to see the rhododendron, which didn't have a fantastic winter, so it's actually not flowering. The flowers are smaller than they sometimes are. Still better than the azalea, which was bought last year and didn't survive the winter. Our fault, should have moved it out of the cold north wind. But there you go. But the clematis is looking fantastic, and it goes all the way up to the roof. And in fact, if you come round here, this part of the garden, and turn around and have a look, and you can see it goes all the way up to the roof of the garage. So once it's finished flowering, that's going to have a chop. Anyway, I'll show you the back of the garden in a minute, but we shall pop through to the veggie garden. What can I say about this bit? This is the peach tree, and the peach tree has got all sorts of baby peaches on it somewhere. You can see one there, and there's a few more here. So should get some peaches this year. Last year they all got hailed on, so it wasn't as good as it could have been. And then down here at the foot of the peach tree there are lupins, that plant I grew from a seed a couple of years ago. So that's nice. There's an iris which has flowered, did a brilliant, never flowered before. Last year produced loads of yellow flowers. I thought, brilliant, every year now we're going to get yellow flowers, and this year it looks like it's going to produce precisely one. So, well, there you go, it's gardening, isn't it? Anyway, pop through this my repainted gate and come into the vegetable garden. So you've got your herbaceous border down here, and the herbaceous border has got peonies. This is a peony in front, which is going to open soon. It's got alliums, which we put in. These are dahlias, which get put in every year and then have to be taken out. That might not do anything. That one's clearly going to do something. They become enormous, the dahlias. So although they don't look like much now, they could be gigantic in a month or so. More peonies, end of tulips, an early peony which is coming to the end. That's going to be a delphinium, and put that in at the weekend because the rest of last year seemed to die. And this is more lupins, more peonies, foxgloves over here, which we're going to do something. There's the other lupin, and there's the back of the peach tree. Rose, which always produces lots of roses, a bit early for that at the moment. Cornflowers, which grow like weeds. The irises are about to come out. Those ones, one of them is out, some of them are going to come out. More lupins, more cornflowers. Anyway, and so what have we got in this vegetable garden? Well, we've got potatoes, two sorts. They seem perfectly happy. I've got onions growing there in the mulch. Next along, I've got broad beans. So they're starting to come up. Next to the broad beans, sugar snap peas. Only about half of those seem to have come up. The rest might still appear. Green beans, sweet peas, and then yellow beans, which are beginning to come up. And then this bit here, this rather bare bit at the moment, because you have to make room for everything, and that's sweet corn growing in the corner, and then this bit's all going to be runner beans, tomatoes, cucumber, courgettes, aubergine, whatnot, all that sort of stuff. But it's a little bit early for planting some of that out, even though I've got it. And over on the other side there are more potatoes, and that big bare bit is actually cerfeuil, whatever that is, can't remember in English. So that in theory is coming up, and then carrots and parsnips with any luck. And then the things you can actually see that have come up are the radishes and the cut and come again lettuce. So there'll be plenty of things to eat normally. The raspberries are sort of all over the place, but not necessarily where I want them. But that's just a raspberry thing, they just seem to do their own thing. There's a whole load over there, and I don't think I put any in over there. Where I did put them in was over here, where some of them are still there. Some grow some more, and others just migrate elsewhere. There are meant to be strawberries here as well. Well, there are a few. It's not the best place in the garden. I think you should be able to see it on there. Strawberry, there you go. There's a lot of primroses, and if you wanted lots of strawberries, I presume I should take out the primroses. But I like the primroses, so I don't take them out. So I presume I end up with a lot less strawberries. This isn't the best bit of the garden, but then, as I often say, not everything can be in the best bit. There's just not enough best bit for everybody. So this bit here, at the back here, this is all being turned into a sort of flower garden. It's mainly foxgloves. There will be gladioli, which will come up later, unless they all die during the winter, which I hope they didn't. And I've got an incipient lupin here. Those big lupin plants, they weren't any bigger than that when I put them in. They were tiny. So probably by the end of the year, that would probably be a sizable plant. And then over here, to the back end of the veg garden, is where the herbs and whatnot live. So that's my rosemary, which isn't as happy as it could be. Partly, I assume, because the tarragon is extremely happy and it's sort of taking over. And then there's more cornflowers, because as I say, they grow like weeds. That is sort of oregano. I think it's actually marjoram, which I suspect isn't as good, but that grows like another weed. I've got some thyme down there that isn't as happy as the thyme over here, and the thyme over there is entirely self-planted. All that thyme came from the one that I actually bought, which is here, which has sort of died back, but it seems very happy here, so I let it get on with it. And then over here we got this is all red currants. That's another red currant. Over the back there's black currant, and there's quite a big now rhubarb plant, which is going very well. Most of my sage died, but there's still some sage which is still left. I'll have to see how that gets on. Anyway, there's some sage there somewhere. So that is pretty much the vegetable garden, and that, let's see now, something a bit close. Yeah, that's the, it's a sort of a Philadelphus, they call it a seranga here, and it smells of orange blossom, absolutely brilliant. It's going to flower in the next, well, it looks as if it's sort of, looks as if it's going to do it fairly soon. I should imagine in a week or two that will be out. And then the whole garden smells fantastic when it's like that. So you can see back over there, garage with the clematis. And if you look over here, you can see, although we've probably got the sun in our eyes, the wisteria, which is looking very good, but not quite as good as it looked actually 2 or 3 days ago. Yeah, they all sort of come and go, don't they? But it's still looking pretty good. So there's quite a decent amount of wisteria. It's actually pretty rampant, the wisteria here, but it looks good. And then over here, my sort of cold frame, I've got a few other things going on. The big things are tomatoes. I'm waiting for it to heat up a little bit so I can plant them out. And then down the bottom are seeds that I've grown. So I think those are all peppers, and then over there they're aubergines, and a couple more tomatoes and a couple of flowers. Not much seems to have come up there. But then that's gardening for you. So let's move back over to the veg garden, close the gate. I've got more dahlias and things coming, but I'll do another video when things have moved on and we've got some more flowers and things to look at. After all, what are we? Mid-May, so you can't expect too much. Anyway, we go up the drive. There's a rather good cypress tree right in the middle of the picture there. That's my next door neighbour's, and he had 2 of those. They were fantastic, and for reasons best known to himself, he chainsawed one of them a month or so ago and just got rid of it. I have no idea why. It's just every bit as good as that one. But some of these people, they can be peculiar. So I'll show you what the place looks like from the road. Turn round. Red. There's my gone, and this is also, I guess, it's got sun in our eyes. That's the Morello cherry tree, which is festooned in cherries. With any luck, I might be able to make a quiche out of that later on. And I'll show you the rest of that piece of garden from the inside. There's a snowball tree, which is looking really good, but it's, I don't know what those things are called. I call it a snowball tree, and so does everybody else, it seems to me. I mean, but it always gets eaten by bugs. There's some bugs that really like it, and they eat it every year. And this year I sprayed it. It doesn't seem to make too much difference to the flowering, but the flowering, it looks completely moth-eaten afterwards. Hold on, I might actually just, I'll climb over the fence, or will I? No, I'll show you the drive. Forsythia, which was absolutely massive. Well, a little bit small now, but that's like, I don't know, that's about 1/3 or 1/4 of what was there last year. So we hacked it to bits, and it's all grown back again, so that's good, and it flowered. And there's a thing, I don't know what that thing is, I can't remember. I don't think I ever knew. It produces some flowers of some description at some time. There's a hibiscus that I've put in, and the things growing at the bottom. There'll be more gladioli. I think there's a gladioli coming up, and there's the various alliums, and there have been tulips, but they've gone. And the thing next to that is, well, it might be a vigelia. In English I don't know what it's called, in French it's a vigelia. And that's a dogwood next to that. And then after the dogwood, another thing that I can't remember what it's called, because I didn't plant any of it, or much of this. And then a lilac, and then another thing that I don't know what it is. And then this huge overgrown thing is a Japanese quince, which will get hacked later on because it's way too big. And all this stuff on this side of the drive is mirrored with the stuff on this side of the drive, which is exactly the same in theory. And this Japanese quince we did hack last year because it was huge, and so that's growing back. And then you get more things that I don't know what they are. Half the lilac tree, not half, say 1/4 of it fell over last year, and I thought, well, it's probably going to die. But it seems to be growing more lilac from the root now, so that seems okay. And my dogwood on this side is just sort of, I don't know, it keeps sort of falling over now. There again, I took half, no, I took about 2/3 of that out because it got way too big. And it's all just all grown back. Things are rampant. And the hibiscus on this side is much bigger. That is because when I bought the one on the other side, it died after a couple of years, and then I replaced it with another one, and the one I bought was actually dead. You can't tell when you buy them, I mean, it's just a stick. So I put it in, waited, nothing happened, and so it was clearly dead when I bought it, and so that I lost another year then. So it basically means that the one on this side, this little noddy one, that's 3 years younger than whatever's on this side. So that's what 3 years does to you. So some of the plants on one side have worked better than ones on the other. It just sort of, I don't know, just depends on what they seem to prefer. This is all Virginia creeper on there. I have very mixed feelings about Virginia creeper. Most of them are, I don't like it, but it's better than a hideous rusty fence. So just get over the fence into this garden. So snowball tree, very huge cypress tree. See that when we get back a bit. That is the Philadelphus aureus or something or other, which I had to go to Burn to get once I decided I want it. It's again mock orange, so it's rather like a Sahanga. It must be pretty much the same thing, but this one is very yellow, very, very bright green in the early spring. Then it darkens over the year, and then every spring comes back with this sort of colour. And this sort of a wild rose thing there, it just fills in a hole in the hedge, doesn't produce much in the way of roses. This is now a large wild cherry, that thing. That is actually that's in next doors, but I mean quite a lot of it is obviously in my garden. And they're doing so well, all these wild cherries, that there could actually be enough to do a barrel of kirsch with that, if I could be bothered to pick them all. And then down here I put in some more foxglove. The Swiss don't really do foxgloves. I don't know why. They don't seem to be popular. You don't see them in people's gardens. So the typical sort of English cottage garden foxglove thing, they don't seem to do. And there'll be gladioli here as well, which I put in, and they came out last year, so there's no particular reason they shouldn't appear this year. Some ferns. The ferns under there, the 3 that I stole out of the forest are brilliant. They're really happy. And the 3 expensive ones that were bought in from a garden centre are very unhappy. Yeah, those who live down there. There's a whole pile of mushrooms here which suddenly appeared. I don't know if you can eat them. If you can, it would be good, but I don't think you can. And then this is, that's another Vigilia, this one. Is this thing? I don't know what this is doing. Is this flower beginning to flower, or has it flowered? I didn't notice it had flowered, so I presume it hasn't. Bizarre, there's a couple of flowers on it. What's that? I don't think it's flowered. Oh well. Looks a bit weird. Maybe it has. I didn't notice it. And I look at this garden almost every day. And then this is a honeysuckle, but sadly it doesn't smell of anything. It's very happy. And that honeysuckle doesn't really smell of anything. Another stolen fern. There's the difference. Stolen fern, expensive bought fern. So how disappointing is that? And then this is over here. There's the magnolia tree, and that is pretty much finished flowering. Just coming to the very end, but it flowers really well every year. We've still got a couple of flowers on it. The flowers smell of old grandmothers. They smell of the sort. There's a really good scent, but it's the sort of scent that was sort of popular with sort of older women in the 70s or 60s. And nobody wears a sort of such a heavy scent as that anymore, I don't think. And over here, there's that's a hazelnut bush, or a tree actually. There are some hazelnuts, but most of them seem to be eaten by something. All this here, this is more wisteria. Maybe that was a good idea to put in, maybe it wasn't. There's not been a huge amount of flowers from this wisteria, but you can see there still are some. So that is what I call the bourgeois garden. That's the bourgeois garden which attempts vaguely to be bourgeois. The sort of garden that people might have that look like a garden, I suppose. And round here, as we come along here, past the trough, under the other very large fir tree. This thing, which is, let's see now, this is sort of like the orchard garden, I suppose you could call it. There's where the blackberries are. Those are all blackberries that grow up that trellis. This is an apricot tree that I put in last year. Last year it did 1 flower, no apricots. This did no flowers and thus no apricots, but it's very early days, a very small tree. That's my quince tree. The first year I put that in, it did about 7 quinces. The very first year, which was astonishing. In the last 3 or 4, well, no, 2-3 years, it's got a disease, and all its leaves fall off. And so I sprayed it this year, and so far, with any luck, I can't see any sign of the disease. And it did do some flowers, and let's see now. Yeah, that looks like it could turn into a quince. I think all these could turn into quinces. These are sort of, not that I desperately need quinces, I just like the quince tree. There used to be a quince tree here, it was very, very old, and very, very old, and bits of it just fell off every year until it became completely ridiculous, and so I took it out and it was totally rotten. So I replaced it with this new quince tree. I'm very fond of this quince tree, so I hope it's not going to become all ill again. That was a fig tree we were given last year and planted. By the time I planted it, the leaves had all fallen off anyway for the autumn, and those leaves have grown have grown since. I don't know that this has survived the winter. I suspect it hasn't. Anyway, there's the back of the Morello cherry tree, and although it's not a great deal to see really right at the moment, there will be fairly shortly. These are all these roses that I've put in. Well, the next door neighbour put in all these roses, which is, I get more benefit than he does because they're hidden behind his garage. But I thought, because the corners are completely impossible to get to with the mower, you can't mow into the corners, so I thought, well, I'll get rid of those then. And I planted a rose there and some lavender, and I did the same on the other side in that corner. And then that was so good that and I'd already planted that climbing rose. I planted that on the old quince tree. But then when I took out the quince tree, then I suddenly had a climbing rose. I didn't know what to do with, so I thought, well, maybe it could climb over the rather hideous fence. But it really wants to go up more than that rather than along, I think. It's not a rambling rose. Anyway, but it does produce really nice flowers. And then so I thought, oh, I'll put more roses in then. So this spring I put in that one, and I put in another two. There and there, and of course the whole I've now got to cut those with shears, all the sort of grass there which you can't get to with the mower. I've done it on one side, not on the other, but they sort of ruined it because I've now got this superb hole in the road there and a thing warning you about it there, and apparently they're not going to fill it in or deal with it until August. So whether all my roses look brilliant anyway, there'll be this hideous road sign stuck in front of them. These look at all those cherries. Should be able to get a barrel out of that. And then that huge hedgehog thing, I've just had that clipped by next door, because the people next door here, he's a gardener, landscape gardener. I don't actually know how much he knows about gardening, but he's good at clipping things. And this thing was massive. He hadn't done it for 3 years, so I got him to hack it down. And it now looks way better, way better. It now looks slightly garden-esque. And at the back here is more nut trees and obviously the fir trees. Anyway, come with me and we'll pop round the back of the house. This is where the watering goes on. So looming up on us is the giant sequoia, and there's this stick in front of it which is actually a false acacia. That might have another name. It is known as false acacia, I think. Anyway, we were given this. Michelle wanted me to put it in. It comes from her brother-in-law. It was given to us as a twig, and it's clearly dead, isn't it? I mean, I put it in last autumn where it looked like that, and it still looks like that. And obviously nothing's going to happen. I don't really care. I didn't want it there in the first place. However, I'll say hello to Baloo the donkey in a minute. This is the apple tree, one of my 2 apple trees. And there's only about there's about half of this left, or even a third of it left. Most of it blew down, and you sort of thought the whole tree was going to go with it, but it hasn't. And it seems to, well, it's astonishing. It had the most amazing blossom a couple of weeks ago or so, and of course all this blossom is all producing God knows how many apples. So all those branches will be on the floor, so I know I'm going to have to take some of them off because it will break the tree. I think it's going to be a general sort of problem with many things actually this year. That's my wild hedge. Wild hedge. And there's a, I don't know what that thing's called in English. I think it's a spire or spirea or something in French. The white thing. And next to that is a willow. And then there's a hawthorn. There's a honeysuckle in there somewhere. There's an acer. There's just a nut tree. There's a variety of indigenous sort of trees that I put in for my wild hedge, which is a good move because obviously as an indigenous they're happy here with this climate, and so they grow extremely well. And that's sort of what the birds expect to find, to eat berries and whatnot. And yeah, it's been a really good thing. And here at the end are two blueberry bushes, which actually should be in acidic soil, which is what I found out later, which is why they're not brilliant. I mean, they're old. I put them in about 15 years ago, almost. Certainly a dozen, though not in this spot, but they just never grow very big. But they still produce, as you can see, it's got all sorts of flowers, and we will have blueberries. Enough to put on a couple of bowls of cereal. Hello, Baloo. 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 Well, he's going to wander off. And there's Charlie the horse, who has decided I don't have anything to give him to food, otherwise he'd be running over here. Got given this willow last year as well. I didn't particularly want a willow here, I don't mind. It's one of those curly ones my friend had on her balcony in Lausanne. They got too big for the pot, so the same woman who gave us the fig tree. So a home had to be found for it, and it might as well go here. So it was quite nice. I mean, it's always good to have things, I guess. There's my horse chestnut tree I planted about, I think it was in 2005 or 6. So it's about a dozen years old. That was a stick when I put it in. And it was the same weekend that I planted the giant sequoia. And the giant sequoia, go back so we can fit it all in the frame, because it's, well, giant it might not be, but it's sizable. It's quite big. But it caught a dreaded sequoia disease. And at one time, it was looking definitely as it was probably going to die, that this disease was going to kill it. And that might still be the case, I don't know. But the disease seems to have slowed down. So on this side, it sort of looks okay. On the other side, where it had disease, I had to take out all the branches. So it's made it look hideous. Well, I'm sort of getting used to it now. Yeah, you can see with all the branches, where I've had to saw them all off. It's the only thing you can do with it. It's a fungal thing. There's no known cure. Apparently a young tree might just get over it, but the big old ones in Geneva, they've been taking out 100-year-old trees in all the parks and had to cut them all down. There's nothing they can do about it. So it's all quite sad. So that's that. Which would be a pity. It was quite expensive, that tree actually, but I wanted a Wellingtonian. But oh well, we'll see. Some things work, some things don't. Here's the view. Now, right down there, if I zoom, you might be able to see it. Sort of down there somewhere. Yeah, you could probably just about make out. There's a sort of a twig right in the middle of the picture. That is that's a walnut tree. Well, it will be one day. The walnut tree that I put in to mark where the land goes up to. Well, I mean, it was growing somewhere, I didn't want it, and I thought, well, I'll stick it there and I'll see where the land goes up to. And I've done the same actually, down there near the walnut tree there. You might just be able to see one, a very small twig thing down there, and that's the other walnut tree that I put in. And then this year, so we normally have cows up to the end of the garden. But this year, apparently, we're having sweet corn. Farmers put in sweet corn. And that suits me because I quite like to hear, I quite like to have, you know, you don't always want the same thing, do you? It's quite nice to have a change. And that is my plum tree, which for the very first time this year flowered, and there are some small plums on it. I put it in about, I don't know, 6 years ago, something like that, maybe a bit less. So I've had to wait a while, but with any luck I'll get a plum. They make the big plums, those ones. And then down there, so the farmer's left a sort of wild bit here, which is, that's good. That's not me leaving that. That's really not mine to play with, that little bit there. I rent that bit out. My compost, I've got a compost, there you just about see it, compost heap, which I steal from him, in the sense that I rent the whole thing out, so I maybe shouldn't be putting my compost on bits of it, but hey, nobody seems to mind much. I can't say the rent is enormous. And over to this, over here, I have to move back a bit. Well, we're going to get the sunrise again. However, you'll be able to hear the cowbells. Next door neighbour, well, it's not quite that simple, but a neighbouring farmer has put some cows nearby, and of course, in common with all Swiss cows, they all have to have cowbells, and the cowbells make a lot of noise. And I can tell you, you might think that cows just go to sleep at night like everybody does. They don't. They make that noise pretty much all night. You do get used to it. I mean, it's a nice noise, but you can have a bit too much of a good thing, and it can be very loud. So there they are. That is a plum tree, a damson tree actually, old damson tree. I have actually made fruit schnapps out of that. Well, I once had enough to make a barrel, otherwise it's certainly enough for jam. And then here, it's very hard to photograph. It looks really good when you're here. It's a larch tree that I put in, which was put that in the same weekend as the horse chestnut tree. So now that's very happy and pretty big. And then next to that tree there, that's a wild cherry again. And they weren't there at all when we arrived. So the last 10 years they've grown into that. Well, it's no bad thing, is it? And this is an old apple tree, which again lost a large, huge branch. It lost quite a large lump of it, but there again you think that it's just going to keel over and then that'll be that because they're so old. But then they just sort of go on. And once again, I think I'm going to have to start making some crutches, because that branch gets loads of apples, and that might snap it off this year when the apples get big. So we might have to do something about that. And this is the cherry tree. This is have a look at this. This has got to be about the biggest cherry tree you ever saw in your life. It's a monster. Let's see if we can fit it in the frame. You can see really. It is an absolutely massive cherry tree. And that is what creates the kiss. There's no way you can eat all that. No way. You can, I mean, you turn it into jam, you freeze it, make it into tarts, you eat the things, and they taste delicious. It's an early flowering. The cherries go black, basically. When they're really, really ripe, they're black. And it's just phenomenal. So that is the cherry tree. Moving up to the house. That's there's a sort of a bank there which I always let grow wild. It looks rubbish if you mow it. You can actually mow it, and I did in the past. It looked horrible, and it's difficult. And what's the point? It actually looks way better like this. But it looks good for a few months, and then I have to sort of cut it, and then it grows all back again. And it looks good again, and then towards the end of the year, it looks all raggedy. And then there is a maple tree, which was also grown as a twig. It was a twig. It came from Alice's, well, I know she had it on her balcony, I think, gave it to us and pretended it was wisteria. So we planted it next to the house, and when finally the leaves came out, we found, no, this isn't wisteria, this thing's a maple. So we took it out from where we put it. We thought, where the hell are you going to put a maple? Oh, we'll stick it in here. And when we planted it, there wasn't anything. This was wide open. All the trees behind it didn't exist. Most of the stuff here wasn't here. It's all grown in the last 12 years or so. And next door to it, this is a huge, now a massive honeysuckle, which is hiding a totally hideous GPO or post office girder thing, which apparently I have to have in my garden. It guides up a telegraph pole. But I thought, oh, I'll try and cover this with something, and I put in this honeysuckle. And the next door neighbour told me that that would die because the honeysuckle, the metal pole would be too hot and the honeysuckle would die. And when she said that, I thought, yeah, she's probably right actually, probably will die. Ha! It's like the biggest garden success ever. It requires no work, no pruning, no nothing. It grows exactly where I want it. You have no hope of seeing the thing it's hiding. And it flowers, and the flowers smell absolutely amazing. But it flowers later than some of the others, so I can't see much in the way of flowers on it now. But they will come. It's early days here. But check that out. There's just an astonishing honeysuckle. There's a green gage tree here actually, but it doesn't get any light. And I've only ever eaten about one green gage off it. I think maybe they sort of fall off or get disease. I always forget to spray it. In fact, I don't normally spray anything anyway. This year did spray the fruit trees because some of them needed it. And I forgot to spray this one, which I should have done while I was about it. I might have had some green gages. You never know. Lilac tree. And then this is my sort of handy herb garden. This is for the stuff where it's near the house, so you tend to go and get your herbs from that. The big plant, flat leaf parsley. And I've got some coriander, which I sowed. Behind that is some dill, which I also sowed. That's all it's coming up. And I've got some curly leaf parsley, the earthenware thing. The carry grass, which I bought for a joke. The lemon thyme, because I like the look of it. Mint, which comes and disappears every year and then it comes back in the spring, so that's currently coming back. A load of thyme, which again is all self-seeded. That thyme was just growing in bits of the vegetable garden where I was trying to turn the earth over, so I grabbed the things, I put them in a pot, and now they're really, really happy. So that's free thyme. I planted some basil, and I planted some more parsley apparently. Have I? What's happening? Maybe I've got double parsley, I don't know. Can't have too much parsley. And there's some the geraniums that look like sticks are ones from last year, and you sort of you keep them for a while to see if they are going to turn back into something, and if they're not, you get rid of them. And the one in the middle obviously just been bought this year. The red one's bought this year, then the other two are last year's. So one of them's clearly okay, and one of them's probably okay. But then in this one, there wasn't anything to keep, so they're all new. And this is a grapefruit tree which I've just put back outside. It lives inside in the winter. I grew it from a pip. Michelle hates it. Well, I've got two of them actually. But I thought it was funny, growing grapefruit from a pip. So I just did it for a joke, man. In fact, you can see the other grapefruit through I haven't put it outside yet. And that's another. That geranium always works. It's got a large rose tree here. That'll be covered in roses. And the thing which will go up this trellis. The problem with this is, although it's brilliant and it goes up the trellis, it looks fantastic, it's not hardy. So you put it in the pot and basically, I don't know how you keep it over the winter. It's sort of stuck on the trellis by that stage. Can you cut it all the way back and hide it somewhere? I don't know. So there we are. Probably video's probably gone on way too long. I'm now totally bored of the garden. But that's what it looks like, and I might update something a few later in some weeks when there's some different flowers and things to look at maybe. Anyway, bye bye.